Blue Bonnets and Lavender, the last chapter of the book, a project undertaken in the age of the coronavirus, a love story, as it were. In April 2014, I heard the news. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Gobo, passed away. I had read The 100 Years of Solitude when he won the Nobel Prize. On his death, I found out he had written an even greater work that I had not read. So in the depths of our solitude, after the death of our dog, I had time to read. I bought this book. And I think I started reading it late that spring and carried on over into the summer, into the harvest season, a rough harvest season. And the words of this book, it just read like a love letter. And it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. And I think it's good to mention it as we bring this book to a close. So thank you for your inspiration, and let's go to our story. Of course, we were always thinking of writing a book called Love in the Age of Coronavirus. I'm sure 100 people are doing it. Ours finished on February 14th. I was in the Hill Country in Texas about the week before publication, wrapping some things up, doing some more research. And there's no mention in this at all of the coronavirus. There's maybe 2 mentions of the President of the United States. So the idea was to write a novel that could withstand time and generations. So that's what I've tried to do. You be the judge now if we've come close to that. Blue Bonnets and Lavender. Half a continent away, the fields and hills are alive with the sight of blossoming blue petals. And we come across a woman working in a vineyard watched by her border collie, who keeps one eye focused on her every step, and the other on 2 sheep trimming thick grass between the rows, dropping natural fertilizer. An elderly field hand pauses to rest, pulls out a water bottle from his pocket, and looks at the vines and indigo hills. God's country. He notices bluebonnets are not all that's in bloom and walks to rows of lavender at the edge of the vineyard, pulls a sprig, smears it between his fingers, and lifts it to his nose. This should taste pretty good in tonight's pasta. With his clippers, he cuts the lavender at the base of the plant and strips silver-green leaves from the stalks, each sprig the shape of purple asparagus. His hands exude the fragrance of French country soap. With enough for an impressive bouquet, he pulls a yard of itchy twine and binds the stems together. He whistles and with his hand motions to the dog. "Barry, come here." The dog obeys, and the man inserts the bouquet under the dog's collar and says, "Go to the house." And the dog carries the lavender on his way back. "Good boy," he praises the dog. "Good boy." The man's tawny hands are rough, lined in leather. He's grown to a respectable age, and his limbs are gnarled vines. He lives a life rooted to the vineyard, mostly, and when he has erred, he has returned, a prodigal son, and tried again. He walks to the house, and Barry follows his heels, inside. He pours a glass of blush wine, liquid fruit of the vine he and his partner have reaped from the Texas soil, sits down at his writing desk, pulls out a quill pen, looks out the window, and watches her as she thins green shoots from sprouting vines of spring. When she agreed to share her life with him, he promised he'd write her a letter the 14th day of each month, the monthly anniversary of the Valentine's Day. He declared his feelings for her face to face. Leaves of grapes flutter from a breeze where she's working, carrying sounds of music to his ears. He picks up his pen, dips it into the ink, and scribbles on white paper as neatly as he can. Dear Jane, about this lavender I picked for you. Paul was lucky he called her when he did. Her business sense served her well. She had sold her company when considering options what to do next. Moving to Europe was an option. Moving back to Texas was an option to be closer to her parents. When Paul saw an article about her in the Austin Statesman's business section, a voice inside told him, "It's time." When she drove through winding roads on the way to Paul's, the hills, the oaks, the countryside spoke to her, much as it had to Paul, his first visit. She was hypnotized. He and Barry, the Blue Merle border collie, gave her a tour of his distillery, the Bootlegger's Express, fed by abundant grapes grown in Texas high plains and bad batches from the area's wineries. He offered experimental infusions she sampled with her nose, cactus the most intriguing. She was pleasantly surprised by the friendly, interesting characters she met. At the end of the weekend, as they said goodbye, he suggested she come back again. She returned, stayed, and found friendship, peace, and love and comfort. They lived together for as many years as seeds she ate from the magic pomegranate. They adopted a shaggy terrier, too. And so it's time to bring this story to a close. For if I continue writing all the things I know of the cast of characters who lived in the hidden hills above San Diego, the words would surely fill another 1,000 pages. I decided to record this history so you would better understand the origins of San Diego wine and the dreams of those who dared to challenge conventional wisdom, to make something new from something old, so you would come to believe in the power of the grape, friendship, and love. It's me who tells this story, who bears witness to all these things, and you know me well. I'm the realtor who sold the hacienda to Carrie Ann and walked with Paul up the mountain beneath a watchful bobcat. When Carrie Ann christened her winery, that was me who slayed the champagne bottle with my bayonet. At harvest, I drove the army mule to haul grapes instead of ammunition. And through it all, I observed with my own ears and eyes, and those of my dear friend, my dear companion, my dear wife Steph, all that took place. Now that I'm fully retired tinkering in the garage on an antique Tucker I finally acquired, I took it upon myself to record this history, so you would come to believe great wine is grown right here in San Diego. I am John. I have another confession to make. No animals were harmed in the writing of the book. About growing grapes, I plead the Fifth Amendment. As I write this final page, let's open the last bottle from the case Paul gave me on my 70th birthday, from the first batch we made together when, as he always reminds me, I defended Steph's honor. Why wait until 90 to drink it? Let's celebrate now, the closing of this chapter. I'm glad I sold him this house. He made good wine, and about that wine he gave me, this bottle tastes surprisingly good after all these years. But as I always tell Steph, they sure would have saved a lot of trouble and money if they spent it buying good wine instead of making it. Although nothing beats the memories of growing it, picking it, fermenting it, pressing it, bottling it, and drinking it when you make it yourself. Cheers. And what of the hero of this story? Some say he's sitting patiently by the Rainbow Bridge, where pets wait for their owners so they can cross over together and play for eternity. As surely as there's just one puppy love in your life, there's one special dog, and Bluey was that dog for Paul and must be waiting at the Rainbow Bridge. But I wonder, an Aussie? Sitting patiently? Not that dog. Never sat still in his life. Others say Bluey's spirit followed Paul to Texas. Now I've got to tell you something. I never told anyone except Steph and the bishop. We visited the hill country to celebrate the opening of Jane's boutique, Sense and Sense a Hillbilly, and met up with Jenny Lee, Harlan, Carrie Ann, Paul, and Jane. We all spent the night at Paul's, and I almost passed out from all the wine. Then Paul brought out his Armadillo Armagnac. That's what he called it. His distillery business is doing really good. I got up in the middle of the night for some water. I was so dehydrated. And as I stepped on a creaky floorboard, I swear I saw Bluey sit up in the doorway where he watched over Paul and Jane as they peacefully slept, entwined in each other's arms. He turned towards me and smiled that Aussie grin. I blinked, and he was gone. When we got back to San Diego, I met with the bishop to talk about seeing Bluey's ghost and the afterlife, which I admit has crossed my mind recently, as my time is not far off. The bishop says Bluey's spirit is in heaven, where he sits at the right hand of the Father, keeping an eye on the Lamb. That may be, but as it's my job to bear witness to the truth, here it is, like it or not. When the coyotes roam at night through the valleys around our house, I hear a dog's voice that stands out, and I swear it's none other than the Blue Merle himself, who in life always wanted to play with coyotes, and in death became the leader of the pack. Rainbow Bridge? Texas? Heaven? Or running with coyotes? Which is it? If Bluey is the dog of women and men, he could easily be everywhere at once. I suppose we'll know soon, in the fullness of time.